Okay, in this video I'm just going to be installing Exchange Server 2016 onto Windows Server 2016. Now before we do the installation, in order for it to work properly, what you have to do is to make sure you have the right version of Exchange in order to run on the Server 2016. So what you basically have to do is just do a search for Exchange 2016 and CU4. So basically CU4, you can download that from Microsoft's website. So if you make sure that you're using this version, then basically the install will succeed. If you mistakenly use the original download, then basically it's not going to work and you'll just be wasting your time. Okay, so I've already downloaded that, so just going to get this going. Okay, and so before we install, the first thing you have to do is of course to promote it to a domain controller. So, well, the first thing I did before then is obviously make sure to do all the updates, but that's normal for Windows anyway. So once you've done that, basically go into the server manager, which always comes up unless you disabled it, and then go to manage, add roles and features. Although I just keep forgetting, before you do that, the first thing you have to make sure is that your network, your Ethernet actually has a static IP address. So if you go into the properties and the IP4, make sure you give it a static address. This is so that the DNS service, it doesn't complain when it's installed, because it obviously prefers to have a static address. Okay. So once you've done that, so you can then continue the installation. So you do role-based or feature-based, and then just select your server, and then basically you want Active Directory domain services, and of course there'll be features that have to be added. So if we add them in as well, and just keep doing next, and just say restart automatically, and then install. Okay, so it's working away. Okay, so that's finished. Now you think that, okay, everything's fine, but no. What you have to do now is go to the exclamation mark, and it will tell you that you have to now promote it to a domain controller. So you're going to add a new forest, and then we give it the name. And of course, you have to make sure in this part to give it the full host name and let it worry about the NetBIOS name later on. So if you're going to be .com or .net, you have to put all of that in there. And you have to make sure to put in the restore password as well. Of course, you don't want to lose that. Okay, that's just saying can't find the DNS. So wait for the NetBIOS name to show up. Okay, and it just strips off the end part. Okay, and that's just where the files are stored. So it looks like it's ready to go now. Okay, so it looks like it's ready to go. Okay, so now it's just going to do its reboot. It'll force itself down and just wait for it to come back. Now this is the part where it might, because I named it Slow Server 2016, and I noticed last time this part was really slow, so we're going to find out if that's still the case. Okay, looks like it's still always like this. So it seems the install's very quick, but the minute you try and actually do anything with it, then all the slowness starts to reappear. So the updates are still slow, and then changing it to a domain controller is still slow. So it's as if the installation is the only part they could speed up so far. And to see if someone might say that it's the hardware that's slow, why it's so slow, but in reality there doesn't seem to actually be much happening. If you look at H-top, there's not really much CPU being used by the emulator, and disk activity is almost nothing. So you have to wonder if no CPU is being used, or hardly any CPU. Then you have to wonder why it's going so slow. So it almost seems as if it's just basically doing nothing. Because that would be interesting if a Microsoft programmer ever came forward and actually explained why their software does this, where it uses no CPU and there's no disk activity. So what actually is going on? It'd be amazing if someone could actually explain that. Because normally when you're processing data, okay, so somehow okay. Okay, so it's up as the domain controller now. So the next thing we have to do is to install the Exchange. So now, well, I was going to do the PowerShell. You can install commands from PowerShell, but I think Exchange does it by installs them itself anyway. So the main requisite that you need is this UCMA runtime. So if you just install that. Okay, so that was quick. So now basically it's time to install Exchange and make sure that it is the CU4 version as well. So what you do is you just double click on that because it will open the DVD, and then just double click on setup inside it. Just to save time, just do the updates later. So you can see it's actually is accessing the hard disk properly there. So you just wonder why it couldn't have done that before. And the speed is good as well, so it's not because of the slowness of the hardware. Okay. Just so they don't get to okay, so basically you want the mailbox rule, which is the standard one. Then make sure to automatically install the features so you don't get an error. And just name your organization. Okay, so now it's just checking to see if the prerequisites are okay. Well, it's definitely doing something. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot I did last time, which might help, even though you're not supposed to do it, but it can actually help when you're installing to speed up the install, and that is on the disk drive. If you go into Device Manager and then Disk Drives, if you go into the policies, you can turn off the write cache buffering, which means that some of the data to be written is stored in memory, and that can speed up a little bit. But of course, if the power goes, it can corrupt your information store. But if all you're doing is testing it, then it can help to save time. Now, of course, once you've installed and your information store is running, then you should turn that back off again. Actually, I have a feeling this might be because there is an option. Microsoft recommends some commands that you enter in PowerShell, and I think if you install those features, I think this part is actually quicker. But if you don't install those features, then this part's slower, so I presume it's actually must be configuring them at this point. Okay, so looks like we're okay. Yep, so we're good to go. So now this is the part where we basically wait to see what happens. Okay, what I'm going to do is leave this part running real time So of course it'll make the video longer, but at least you can share the pain of having to watch an Exchange server install, and I might add some music on as well, just something to listen to. But of course this isn't something that one does for entertainment. You're supposed to really be doing it as part of a job where you're getting paid, but it's good to know how to do it so that you can actually sort of earn the wages. Oh, just in case you're still watching, the only reason the disk speed went up there is because I'm just preparing another file just for something else. So it's not, it isn't because Microsoft suddenly sped up the installation. Okay, it looks as if we're stuck in that same situation again, where there's hardly any disk activity and no CPU. So it's almost as if the operating system has just gone to sleep. But like I say, I'd still love to know if a Microsoft programmer could just come out and come clean and explain why does this happen? Why is there no CPU, hardly any CPU? You know, what can you actually do? Actually, well, it's doing something now. But I'd still love to know, what can you do in code that doesn't use any CPU and no hard disk? What do you actually do? I'd just love to know what it is. Because obviously the code is doing something. Because it doesn't make sense that it's sleeping, because why would you sleep? Then you're not doing anything. But obviously, it's a big mystery how it can actually, do something using no processing power and no disk and hardly any disk activity. What actually can you do? If there's any programmer who can answer that question of how can you write code which doesn't do anything but yet it still runs, it just seems like a very mysterious thing to me. But it seems as if Microsoft have mastered this art, whatever it is. Because I know that normal programmers, they just have the code running 100% and just hammering the disk. That's what you normally would do. But to come up with a way of coding where you can use hardly any CPU and you're not really touching the disk, I just don't understand it. What actually are they doing? What is this code called? And how can you? I don't even know how they manage this. It just seems amazing that it's actually possible to do. Obviously something is happening, but it's just very slow. Now, this is the point where you want to just pull the plug, because you think something's wrong, but as long as those little processes are running, there's nothing coming over the network. There's no network traffic, hardly any disk. Just use a little bit of memory, and there's barely any CPU. So what would be nice if Microsoft could have a demonstration where they actually show you the code, and they actually give you the source so you compile it, and then you run it, and then you watch while it uses no CPU and no disk activity and no network activity, and you sit there amazed and wondering, how did they do that? Because I know it's been like this ever since Windows 2000, Vista basically. Windows Vista is where they introduce this concept of basically somehow doing nothing while doing something. And it seems they've never gotten rid of it. Now I'm watching this and I'd swear it's got stuck. You'd almost want to just pull the plug, because it's like nothing's happening. So let's see. All I can say is if this actually ever finishes, I'll be amazed, because somehow they've achieved something which should be impossible. Because you literally have to fill 99% of your code with sleeps in order for it to run this slow. So maybe it's almost as if the Microsoft programmers, they just type sleep, a number, then semicolon, return, and sleep again. And that's what they're typing most of the time when they write their code. Because obviously something's trying to run. Still hardly any disk. Wowee! I can't believe it. Yes, that did actually catch me by surprise. I could not believe that it actually, I thought it was stuck personally. But somehow, the impressive code from Microsoft, it was still running, even though I thought it was over. Okay, so now we have to reboot, but in order to do the reboot, I just want to change a setting. Okay, so then I get my restart. That's better. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. Because usually once you install Exchange, the boot up becomes slower. So now we have Exchange installed. If we go in and just have a look, at the administrative center, okay, so we've got our one user. So normally, this is the point at which most people would just stop the recording, but I thought I'd just add a little bit extra. And because what I've done is, in the past, or in a previous video, I was testing Exchange 2013, so I loaded up about 2 million something users into it, and it certainly sort of got the, well, some things didn't work too well. So what I'm just going to do is I'm not going to do it as badly this time, but just to basically install a couple of some users, and I'm just going to this is basically just to show that it's actually operating. Okay, so first thing we have to do is add these organizational units. Okay, so once they're added, now I'm just going to go into the Exchange PowerShell, Exchange Management Shell. Okay, so I'm just going to add these 500 users into the domain. So it's interesting that it's actually IIS that does the work. So they're actually using a web server to add users. That's interesting. But so the other thing, it seems it takes quite a lot of CPU to add the users as well, which of course can mean that it's not that fast, as fast a process as you would want. And that's what I found out with adding those 2 million odd users. It actually took quite a few days simply because of how slow this process is. And this is just 500 users. And already you're having to wait quite a while. And then you've got the other problem is that if you live in Sri Lanka, then you're going to have a bit of a problem setting up Exchange, because if your name's too long, then it's not very happy. Okay, so now that I have those names, the last thing I have to just do is just get those names into a list. Even trying to export just 500 names into a CSV, well, that wasn't too bad, I suppose, but I'm just saying that if you try to do that with sort of 2 million users, it takes quite a few hours to export. I suppose 500 wasn't too bad. Okay, so it might seem that I'm just wasting time here, but I'm just trying to use it to just do a quick test. So now that we have the Exchange set up, it seems a shame just to not actually do something with it. So what I'm just going to do is use this list . Basically, I'm going to use it with Postal, which is an application you can use to test your mail server. And what it does is you can use it to send a whole heap of emails to it just to test how it's working. So if you run that, and what you'll find is that now this server is under load. So we can see the processes as the emails are come flying in. And this is actually a good way of testing your information store recovery procedures, because you leave this running overnight, you can actually fill it up with quite a few gigabytes of email, and then obviously you can pull the plug and then see if the store will recover. It looks as if utilization is 100% though, so that's one. Maybe it's to do with the spam filter, or the anti-malware. So even if a reasonable amount of email comes flying into your Exchange server, it will actually use a lot of CPU. And so now if we go into the administration, we do a refresh, and all the users are now showing up. Okay, so we'll just call off the attack there. And then what we can do is you can see also if you can connect to the okay, looks like it's not as easy to connect as I thought. Okay. Alright, so basically that's pretty much it, I suppose. Let me just okay, it's probably okay, it doesn't seem to be happy. Maybe it has to be with Explorer. Okay, looks as if, because I'm logged in as administrator, so all I have to do is just log out. Okay, so now I'm just going to try one of the users from the list. Okay. It's the same password anyway. And there you go. So there, basically, these are some of the random emails that were sent by postal, and as I say, it's something you could use to obviously test to at least make sure your web server really is functioning. Sorry, your mail server is functioning like it should. And so there you have it. So that's basically an install and test of Exchange 2016, and it took a while, but basically that's the main thing you have to get used to, is just the fact that it's going to be slow. So as long as you've got a cushy job where you can sit around and wait for it to install, then that's good. But then of course, if you're under time pressure, then you're going to have a bit more of a problem. Okay, you can subscribe if you want to see any more videos like this, and I suppose I'll pull up these scripts as well on, basically there'll be a link to the to my site, and it'll just have these as downloads just in case you want to give them a test as well. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.